Because of some schedule conflicts and changes, we had to kind of change the order around. But very, very open, right? If you guys have questions, please stop me. I want to make sure that you guys are getting what you came for. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about the most sexy part of buying a house is the mortgage process, right? No? No. So, cool. So path to home ownership, right? So you can see yourself living in your next home. How many of you guys are looking to buy a home right now? Yes, no, maybe. How many of you guys maybe in the next 6 months to a year want to buy a house? All right, cool. So, and then some of you guys are some time away, but at the end of the day, it's good to know the process anyway, right? So, what are the reasons to buy a home? What's a good reason to buy a house right now?
Equity.
Equity. Awesome. Investment. What was that? Low interest. Right. So let's talk about interest. So interest, right? People say, oh, interest rates are getting higher and whatnot, right? Did you know that the last 47 years, the average interest rate was 8.35%? The last 47 years. So right now we're looking at in the low fours, right, for interest rates. So we're still in historic lows. So yes, the projections are, and we'll talk about some of the projections, but the projections are for it to continue to go higher, but still we are in historic lows. So it's still the best time to buy was 5 years ago, right? So that's always where we're at. So you want to make sure that there's a lot of positive. You want to know there's a lot of positive things about buying your home. So what are the reasons? So prices will continue to rise. So any realtors in the room, what percent increase is your home value rising per year in New Jersey in this area? Throw a number out.
5%.
5%? And that's really aggressive. That's great, right? 5%. Even if it's 2%, 3%, going back to what Hector was saying, right, about equity, we're talking about your house is growing even at 2, 3, 4% a year, right? That you're growing in equity, but not only that, you're paying your mortgage balance down. So your equity is growing in both ways in essence, right? So probably the best reason to buy a home. Mortgage rates are always changing. So even though, right, we're still at historic lows, they are projected to rise, right? That's a fact of the matter. Whether renting or buying, someone is paying the mortgage. So wouldn't you be the one wanting to pay the mortgage, right? When I sit down in front of families, and we calculate the rental, what they rent per month, and we multiply that by 3 or 4 years, it's tens of thousands of dollars that we're basically throwing away, right? If you have your home, you're paying down your mortgage, your balance, and the price is going, so you're getting equity. So it's always better to own, right? Owning is a form of forced savings, right? So going back to that, you know that you're going to be, that you're it's a, and I'll get to this in a little bit in a few slides, but there's a bunch of different investment tactics, right? Whether it's stocks and bonds and 401ks and whatnot. Real estate always beats out every other one, right? By professionals that invest in every kind of instrument, right? The wealthy talk about having 7 streams of income, right? And real estate continues to lead the rest when it comes to the best investment. There is a substantial tax benefit to owning a home, right? So I'm not sure if we have a tax expert in the room, right? I know there's some tax law changes, but regardless, when you're buying your house, you are going to be getting a tax benefit. So even if your mortgage is going to be a little higher than what you're currently paying in rent, you're saying, man, wow, it's going to be more expensive in order for me to live. Yes, maybe on a monthly basis, right? But again, you're talking about that monthly basis. You're not talking about the long-term equity that you're building. You're also not taking into consideration the tax benefit that you're going to be receiving when you own a home, right? So sometimes, things it's always cheaper to own, right? So avoid the rising rent trend. Any landlords in the house, right? Landlords, do you raise rent, right? How often do you raise rent?
Once a year.
Once a year. Why do you raise rent?
Because cost of living goes up.
Cost of living goes up. So here's the thing. Back in 2008, market crashed. We have some home value that depreciated. Did rents go down? No. Right? Rents always go up. Right? Even in the rent control area, rents are always going to go up. So, you know, owning a home is still one of the greatest investments the average American can make. What is even more certain is everyone needs a place to live. Investing in a home with a fixed interest rate provides stability. One will not experience a landlord. So, when you enter into a mortgage, right, prior to 2008, there was a lot of predatory lending, and thankfully, we don't have, it's more heavily regulated because it protects you, the consumer, right? And there was all kinds of interest rates and arms and balloon payments and prepayment penalties. But the interest rate right now, especially for a first-time home buyer, you're going to enter into a fixed rate, right? So you know what you're going to pay, right, on a monthly basis. Now, in that mortgage payment, for those of you who may not know, it's not just the principal and interest. You also pay insurance. You're also paying taxes. So if the taxes do go up or down, it is gonna change your mortgage payment because your mortgage payment includes all of that. But it's a fixed payment, right? Where rent, you don't know, right? Where rents, if it's not in a rent control area, and you know, you maybe they rent they raise your rent by $50 or so, but they can get $300 more. They'll either rent or they'll say, listen, you need to pay this much, or you need to get out. I'm going to find somewhere else. So you don't have the stability, right, when you're renting. Landlords write contracts with provisions and annual increases in them. So renting means one is subject to moving at the end of the lease term, and most landlords factor maintenance into the rental rates they charge. Because if you own a home, you're in charge of that upkeep as well, right? So that's also included in that rent that you charge.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I don't have to read that. That's a picture of my family there. That's I photoshopped myself to make myself look young, slimmer. No, I didn't. It was just a couple years ago. But anyways, fulfilling the American dream. This is part of what we want, right? We want to own our homes. And I think that the good thing is that the FHA programs, and we even have some conventional programs that are designed to really help people get into their home for the first time. Whereas back in the olden days, you know, even in our family, right, even our parents, they had to really save, right, for long periods of time and put a huge chunk of money down, right? Pre-Great Depression era, right, you had to come up with 50% sometimes of the value of the house, right, to go down, right, to purchase a house. Then it became 20%. Now with an FHA, right, you can buy 3.5% down. You can buy a property, right? So the good news is that now it's easier for people to get into their homes. There's some cost to that, right? But the fact is that you only need 3.5%, or even 3% in some cases, right, for the conventional program to actually purchase your home. So home prices are expected to rise. We've been seeing that, right? Whether you're planning to relocate into a different area of the country or planning to stay in your current city or state, waiting to move may end up costing you more than you think. Keep in mind that the industry changes day to day, and home prices are projected to rise between 3 to 4% in 2018, which we're on track to see that, right? So what's the cost of waiting? So waiting to purchase a home until you're emotionally ready may not make the most sense in the long run. If you're ready now, right, sometimes buying a house is not an easy transaction. It's probably going to be one of the biggest transactions at this point in your life, right? And that's why it can be very daunting. It can be very complicated. Who you work with really matters. But if you're ready now, right, why wait? And if you're not ready, you need to talk to professionals to know what it is that you need to do in order to be ready, so you can have a definitive timeline for yourself, right? Whether it's your credit, right? We talked about that. That's why we call this credit to closing. Whether it's the down payment funds that you're going to need, right? Whether it's the income. Maybe you don't have the income, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But you need to know where you're at. You don't know what you don't know. Right? And I think we love doing this because we love educating the public, because a lot of people think that they're not ready, and when we analyze their current situation, they are. Right now, our job is to help them get into the best scenario possible, and we'll guide them to do that. But you need to know where you're at.
You said analyze their current situation.
Yeah, so what I mean by that is we look at, so whenever I speak to anybody that wants to apply for a home loan, right? We look at three things, right? We look at your income, right? What do you do? How long have you been doing it? I think Izzy talked about 2 years in the industry that you're working in. So what's your income? What is your credit? Not only score, but what are your liabilities? Right? How much do you owe on a recurring monthly basis? And then what are your funds? How are you buying this? How are you paying this house? Right? The days of buying a house with no money down, right, before 2008, right? Those are very tough. There's set concessions and whatnot, and there's down payment assistance programs, but you have to have some capital, right? So a lot of times we look at certain situation, and when you say, wow, this person has great income, has great credit, but they don't have the funds, right? Or this person has a lot of funds, great income, but the credit is shot. So we look at each situation in order for you to know where you're at. So this process is not a transactional process. We work with clients for months, sometimes even years on end, in order for us to get them into their house, right? And I say years because it's probably on them. But quite honestly, depending on where you're at, you could be more ready than you think, and you need to just know. Right, so when I talk to people, I says, well, you know what? Let's pre-qualify you. I talk to them over the phone, and if they seem like they're or in person, I don't have to even look at any documents, but I can tell them right off the bat, okay, well, listen, it sounds like this is the case. We got to see some documents to verify that, right? Okay, so that answer your question?
Yeah, is the goal to get them in a house or in is it a specific house? Like, the goal is just to give them a house.
Yeah. So all right. So let me expand on that. So this is the process, right, of buying a home. Typically, you say, all right, you know what, I want to buy a house, right? Typically, you would call a realtor, right? And I think that the realtor is going to be the one to find the house for you. But before that realtor looks for houses with you, right, and your family and whatnot, they need to know what you're approved for. So if you're not pre-approved, they're going to call me and they're going to say, hey, Eric, can you pre-approve? What's your name? Fedoro. So can you pre-approve Fedoro? Great. So I'll call you and we have these conversations, and then once I verify, right, your income, your credit, and your down payment, then I'm going to pre-qualify you for a certain amount. So if you're pre-qualified for $300,000, now you go and you work with Anna, and you say, okay, Anna, I have $300,000 to work with, right? I want to live in the Bloomfield area. A must is I need 3 bedrooms or whatever the case may be. So now we get that number, right? And that's a starting point, right? Because it fluctuates depending on taxes and whatnot. And I'll share that information with you. But now you have like a number where Anna can go, and she's going to use her systems, right, and her expertise to find you the house that you're looking for, right? She might tell you also that if you pre-qualify for a $300,000 home, and you want to live in a certain area where it costs $600,000, she's going to tell you you're crazy, right? She should tell you you're crazy.
I would.
Right?
Sophie would tell me don't say that, but I would.
Because what a realtor is there is they look at the numbers and they say, okay, what do you want? And that's why they're going to go ahead and they're going to really get to know you as an individual, right? And they're going to go ahead and try to match that right home for you within that price range. Right, and that's why they're gonna so it's not this is not a transactional thing. This is very, very personal. We get to see you and we get to see your family and they get to know your wants and your needs, right? And you might say, you know what, we're expecting and we want to live in a community where the school system is great, right? So their job is to research those things for you and take that budget that a financial a lender comes up with. And then they start looking. So the first step really is to get pre-qualified and or pre-approved. They're slightly different. But the fact is that they're both going to tell you how much you can afford, right? And then we take that number, and a realtor typically is not going to show you a home, right, without that letter. Because she needs to know that someone actually did their homework and knows that you can actually, she's gonna spend a lot of her time trying to find you your home. She wants to know that you're actually pre-qualified by an institution, right? Or by a mortgage broker or mortgage lender or whatever the case may be. And then once you do that, then you start looking for your home with a realtor.
Do they ever say you're crazy and you don't need a house? You're crazy. Do they ever just turn you down
No.
Crazy?
Well, no. So I think if you're pre-qualified, right, that's a good. So the first thing is sometimes you're not pre-qualified. I work with people and I say, listen, right now this is not gonna work. But we try to come up, right? Our job is to get people into their homes. Go back a couple slides, talk about the American dream, right? This is a better investment. So this is how you gain generational wealth, right? So our job is to get somebody into their home, because once they have equity in their home, it's gonna be better for them in their futures, right? I have people that in 2 years refinancing and they're cashing out and they're purchasing investment properties now. They have multiple properties, or they cash out and they pay off student loan debts and they're saving $1,200 a month, right?
Can I give an example
yeah.
of that? So I had a client, and it's a single mother, doesn't qualify for much, and she actually qualified for 120, but she was realistic, 120, but she was realistic, and that's a single mother, which is, very dear to me to help somebody like that. And I didn't give up on her. I didn't tell her she was crazy. I said, that's what you have to work with. That's your income and that's how much you qualify. We try to make it work. Once we couldn't do anything about it, I actually had her matched her up with another lender to see if we could raise what she qualified for, and we did. We actually raised by switching her lender. This is why it's very important to work with a team of good people. So her lender was able to qualify her up to 150. So now it's a little bit more realistic that I'll find her something. And she wasn't trying to live in the greatest neighborhood. She's like, all right, Irvington, Newark, and we're under contract now. We finally, and it's been over 6 months. I didn't give up on her. I didn't tell you quit. You just have to be realistic, right? You have to. You can't have. I have clients with $120,000 budget, and they want to live in the nicest neighborhood with, 2-car garage, whatever it is. I'm like, I'm sorry, even at 120, we can't find you anything. And if you're not willing to compromise on what you're looking for, then we're not real estate fairies. We can't make things appear out of thin air. We will work with you when we're all passionate about what we do and getting you in a home, and we partner up with the best in the industry just to provide you the best service. But at the end of the day, if you're realistic, and we work within, within reason of what we can put you into a home, like I said, that person might not be in that house for 30 years or 10. Their situation might change. They might get a raise. They might find a husband, somebody, a second person that will bring income to the family. They might need to expand their family, and then they maybe another year or two, they might be able to buy a different home. They can't look at it as not being realistic. We all want to live in $1 million home at first, but it doesn't happen that way. As long as you're realistic, we're not going to turn you down. We'll work with you. We're not going to call you crazy. Now, if you tell us you want, a mansion at $120,000 budget, we will sit you down and show you this is what's on the market within your budget. And if you're not willing to compromise, there's only so much that we can do.
Thank you, Anna. And it's not. Sometimes it's not what you. Sometimes it's not what you can afford. Sometimes it's what you want to afford, right? So you might be able to afford a $5,000 mortgage payment, but that's not in your plans. You don't want to do that, right? And that's perfectly fine too. Our job is to tell you what you can afford, because we're all regulated. We're all regulated the same, right? And the regulations are stricter since 2008, which is good to protect you as a consumer. But we work with you. We want to know what your wants and your needs are. And let's say, and so going back and says, well, if this person doesn't qualify, our job is to say, okay, well, how can we qualify them? Do they have a co-borrower that they can add in a mortgage, right? Do they have a family member or son or something? And that happens all the time, right? But still, it's better to do that and get somebody into their home and avoid throwing money away in rent. And now you have your own property that you can call yours, right? And then people refinance all the time, because now they say, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and take out my son, who I used to buy a house 5 years ago, now that because my son is not ready to go buy a house on their own, whatever the case may be. So we're really helping families, right? So we try to figure, and sometimes we say, listen, you're not ready now. This is what you need to do, right? And we stay in touch to make sure that you're working on those things, so when you're ready, you're ready, right? And we keep it real with you, right? We keep it real, but our job is to try to figure out how we can get you into your home, right? So the cost of waiting. Waiting to purchase a home until you're emotionally ready may not make the most sense in the long run. this below the impact of the interest rate of an interest rate change, what be a mortgage payment. If today was $250,000, but then in a year it increases by 4%, right? So today you have a mortgage for $250,000. The mortgage is at 3.75, low fours, whatever the case may be. That's what your payment and interest payment is, 1158, right? If next year that same house, right, goes up by 4%, the realtor said that in this area was going up by 5%, or whatnot, right? So now that means that next year you're at $260,000, right? Same house, right? The interest rates are going up, and I put 4.625 because in one of the reports that was one of the projections of where the interest rates are going to be by then. So now your P&I, your principal and interest payment is $1337 per month. So over the life of that loan, and most first-time home buyers when they get into a loan, they do a 30-year term. Over 30 years, you are going to spend an additional $64,440 just by a 4% rise in price for the house and by less than a point in rise of interest rates, right? So it adds up, right? It adds up. The power of equity. What will your home be worth in just 4 years? So, I believe I used here. I was using 4%. We could probably do the math from 268 to 276. But this is over the next 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, just to go back a bit, you mentioned on the last slide points. Can you explain to us what a point is?
Got it. Okay. So great question. So I mentioned the point, and I was referring to interest rates, right? So the interest rate, let's say you got a mortgage on a 3.75% interest rate. That's the interest that you are paying on that mortgage over the life of the loan, right? A point is just basically 100 is 100 basis points of that. So like if you're at 3.75, a point more will be 4.75, right? So that's a point. Right, when you're talking in terms of interest rate. So good question. A change of, I'll throw another number out. A change of 0.5% in interest rate, right? If you're at 4.25 and then you go to 4.75, over the life of the loan, we're not even talking about increase in price in homes. Let's say the home stays valued the same, but just a 0.5 point interest rate difference is gonna cost you tens of thousands of dollars over the course of 30 years, just in that slight change in interest rate. So interest rates are based on what interest rate you get is based on your credit worthiness. So when the banks are lending money, they're looking at everybody's current situation, right? And they want to make sure that you're not going to default on that mortgage, right? So they look at your credit history and your specific financial situation to say, okay, well, how likely is Eric in walking away from his home? So here's the thing, for the FHA program, because you're allowed to only put down 3.5%, just think of it, you're putting 3.5% down, so the bank has to say, okay, I have to ensure that this person's not going to walk away. So the interest rates for an FHA program are actually, one of the best out there. You're gonna have to pay homeowners insurance, a steeper homeowners insurance on a monthly basis. You're gonna have to pay an upfront mortgage insurance. So the money that the bank lends you is based on your credit risk. So interest rates is based on credit, right? On your specific credit. Like where are you, right? And also the loan program. Also, how much are you putting down on a property? Because it all ties up to your credit risk, right? So that's what we look at credit rates and interest rates. And one bank is going to give you a rate, and another bank, right? Even if they're going to try to beat it or whatever, but it shouldn't be too far apart because we're all regulated the same, right? But it's always good, right, to say, hey, you have a right as a consumer to say, you know what, I want a second opinion, right? I want to go and if you guys are pre-approved, I want to go and check. I'm going to go with Eric to see if they can beat the rates and terms somehow, right? But we're still going to analyze the same numbers and numbers and numbers.
When it dropped because that's a second hard pull?
Great question. Yes. right? So when you do a hard inquiry, it's gonna appear on there, and your point is gonna your credit score is gonna get affected slightly, right? It's not gonna. So here's the thing: we analyze that, and if we think 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 points is gonna affect you, right? We got to be careful with that. But we do have to pull it, because going back to the question when Gizzy was speaking, different companies have different parameters, right? Whether you go to a car, if you're gonna go get your credit pulled by a car dealership, or by a mortgage company, right? Or by Credit Karma, right? So we have different parameters, and typically hard inquiries are a little bit stricter than a Credit Karma would be. So when somebody tells me that
Credit Karma doesn't lower your credit scores.
They don't lower your credit score, but what I've seen is
it's a personal pull.
It's a personal pull, right? It's a soft inquiry. But what I'm saying is that if you're at 680 in Credit Karma, chances are if I pull your credit, it might drop. It might not be at 680. It's going to be a little lower than that, right?
Correct. Credit Karma could be off anywhere from 80 to 100 points. So that's why I don't recommend it. It'll only confuse you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my Credit Karma told me I could qualify for a mortgage, and the next thing you know,
it's a starting point, right? I think it's a starting point, but you like if you're gonna buy a house, if you're ready to buy a house, work with the lender and see where you're at, right? So we can wrestle and see what we can do.
Excuse me, Gizzy, not Credit Karma, which ratings agency should we use?
Yeah, we usually recommend Experian.com, Equifax.com. They're more conservative in the credit scoring model. Credit Check Total, CreditCheckTotal.com is owned by Experian, but basically they have more of a conservative credit scoring and more of a realistic. They could be off too, anywhere from 15 to 20 points. But Credit Karma is really going to be off. And, we just don't recommend it. People go there just so that they could see that, I'm going to get qualified for a, $500 credit card, and they're a business owner. That's not recommended for them to have a $500 credit card. If you want to restart the building of the process of that, maybe.
I pay $10 a month for Score Sense.
Oh, Score Sense, yeah.
Right, I pay $10 a month. It's not free, but like I just know where I'm at, and if there's something that comes up in my credit report, like they'll let me know, hey, you gotta research this.
Correct. As long as you have an understanding of where you are at, and maybe you're gonna be off 20, 30 points. More importantly for you to understand is how you are responsible for your credit report. You gotta build a relationship with your credit report. You gotta know what you're doing. If it's hanging high, if it's hanging low. Sorry.
You don't know what you don't know, right? So you got to know.
Correct. But you got to have an idea. So I just want to make you think about it.
Cool. Going back to what do you need to qualify? We talked about looking at income, credit, and down payment, right? So the down payment, we talked about the two different programs. Some people say, "Hey, Eric, are there down payment assistance programs?" And yes, they are. They're government funded. The most popular ones are Smart Start and Homeward Bound, I believe it's called. Only certain banks are approved. We're actually in the process of getting approved to be a lender for these programs. But I have a counterpart in one of the banks that is. And every time I can help someone, and if all that person needs is the money, right, and everything else is great, my job is to get that person into the home, right, and I'm going to refer them to someone that's in that program until we get that program too, right. But the thing with these, they change. They're government funded. Once the funds are done, sometimes that program is done. But Smart Start and Homeward Bound are. I think Home Seekers just finished as well. But these are something like if you go to NewJerseyState.gov or something, that they'll explain these down payment assistance programs. But they have to be in certain areas, and not just everywhere. They have to be in certain areas that are coded to be in a Smart Start or in a Homeward Bound Seeker program. Income verification. We look at pay stubs, we look at taxes, W-2s, 1099s. If you are self-employed, we got to look at 2 years history of that self-employed income. We look at all your asset documentation. We need a 2-year history. If you are a student and you start working in the field that you graduated with, that's your student history counts as that 2-year work history. right? So you can buy a house right out of college or as soon as you start working. We're looking for 3 years of expected income. So we look at the likelihood for you to continue to make those payments, right? Going back to funding the loan, right? So we really make sure. So like if I had a case where a lady was receiving Social Security income for a child, right? I think the father was killed in action and overseas and whatnot, and he was receiving it, and he was going to stop getting it when he was 17, right? And she wanted to use that income, so we couldn't use that income to qualify her. We still were able to get her into her home, right? But we needed continued income for 3 years, right? And a good credit history, which you talked all about, right? So that's the website, www.state.nj.us, to talk about any of the down payment assistance programs. And I have somebody in another bank that I work with closely, because our office is our headquarters is in Cranford, and we just opened up an office in Bayonne in Hudson County, and I work with a lot of families that they have everything but the cash. So we try to see what we can do to help them, right? What you need to do: find out your current credit history. So we spoke about that. Credit Karma. Now that I spoke to Gizzy, I'm gonna cross that out of my presentation. You can get your free credit report on on annualcreditreport.com. Every single year you can pull it for free, right? So you can have it, and that's a tri-merge, because going back to what we talked about. We look at 3 scores. The mid score is what we go by. Start gathering all of your documents: your income verification, W-2 forms, tax returns, employment, credit history, bank statements. We have to look at all that, and then contact the professional to develop a spending plan and determine how much you can afford. So we look at DTI, which is debt to income ratio. If you make $10,000 a month, right? In an FHA program, you cannot exceed a mortgage payment of $4,600 a month. That's 46%, right? So there's certain guidelines that we live by, right? There's, going back to what Anna was saying, that one lender was able to approve someone for a little bit more, because there's guidelines, but then there's also risk levels that some lenders would do, and some bigger institutions, 9 times out of 10, I always beat out the rate in terms of a bigger institution, because they're the safer bet, right? Whether it's Wells Fargo or Bank of America or whatever, you either have to put more money down or they're going to approve it for less. So I always try to beat, when somebody says I got approved by so-and-so, I say, listen, get a shot. Let me see if I can beat the rate in terms or provide you better service, because these individuals in these banks, they get paid salary. They don't care how fast you close, right? Us, we want to help you, because we don't get paid until you close.
Yeah,
right?
It was your company, by the way, that approved for more.
There you go. Perfect, right? So we're a little bit more risk averse within the guidelines, right? So what you need to do: consult with a loan officer to review all those things and your goals. Talk to someone like myself. We have Kevin in the back that also represents my company that can pre-approve you. Knowing your options will definitely make the mortgage process easier. Your dream home may already be within your reach. All you have to do is qualify. But the big question is, how much do I actually need to qualify? Going back to credit, in an FHA program with 3.5% down, you actually can buy a home with a 580 credit score. 580, right? When I work with individuals that are in the 580, I'll say, listen, let's get you to a 620, right? Because 580, again, going back to credit risk, you're going to pay more for it. And my job is to help individuals get into their family and be able to afford it long term. So if we can help the person get to a 620, I'm always going to I'm always going to say, listen, let's get you to a 620. Let's work on your credit, right? Work with Gizzy, right, to get you to 620, because that's an investment. Right, remember that interest rate change that we talked about? If you can qualify for a better interest rate, you're going to save tens of thousands over the course of the life of the loan. So, but some people might say, they might win the lottery and say, I don't care, right? I want to buy a house now, and that's perfectly fine. Buy a house, but their interest rates are going to be a little bit higher. But you can buy at a 580. You can actually buy lower than 580, right? In FHA, but you're going to have to put 10% down, right, to do that. But the whole purpose of FHA is that you want to put 3.5% down in the program, right? That's just my dog Honey, because I was doing this presentation and my daughter told me to put it on there, so it was Honey. All right, she goes, Dad, I dare you to put Honey. I said, you dare me? You got it.
Yeah,
right, so
Chacho?
Chacho's coming. So saving for a down payment. If you want to be a homeowner, you need to save. If you save $300 per month in 2 years, that's $7,200. That's a down payment of 3.5% of a $205,000 home. But let me go back. Let me. My last transaction last year, he closed 3 days before Christmas. Gentleman had $10,000 to his name, right? Including what was in his 401k, whatever. He's working for 18 years for a company, whatever. He had $10,000 to his name, right? And to buy a house of about $300,000, 3.5% is $10,500. But that's not all you need. You also need closing costs. You also need to come with reserves for escrow or whatnot. So you're gonna need about 20 grand, right, to buy a $300,000 home if the taxes are in the $10,000 range or whatnot, right? At one point we could have been like, nah, you know what, you don't have enough money to buy, right? But we said, no, let's go out there, and the only way you'll be able to buy a house is if you get a concession for the remaining amount, right? Because you can get a seller's concession. Do you guys, any realtors want to talk about what a seller's concession is? I'm calling you out. Anna spoke, you did very well. I'm going to call on Sophie. Sophie, stop. Sophie, Nicola, seller's concession.
You need Sophie? Okay.
So I'll talk about it. So I'll talk about seller's concession really quickly. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say the house is $100,000. The seller's concession is a credit that the seller will give back to the buyer to help him with closing costs, him or her. What that means is that you're offering $100,000 on the house with, let's just say, $10,000 in seller concession, which is not realistic, but just figuratively speaking, what you're really offering the seller is $90,000 for their home because they're going to credit you back $10,000. Now, it's still possible to submit a full price offer of $100,000 and request that $10,000, that same $10,000, you just have to submit an offer for $110,000. So the seller will still get the proceeds of the $100,000 sale of the home, and then you would receive a $10,000 credit to help pay for the closing costs on the mortgage.
So now you would have to qualify for that amount, and that home would have to appraise for that amount.
Yes, that's
right?
the other piece. Yep.
So,
if the home doesn't appraise with that addition, you got to be careful, and that's when you want to consult with your mortgage rep or your real estate professional to make sure that we're not going into a deal that's not going to appraise, and then you're not going to be able to purchase the home for that amount.
And the loan amount is going to be a little longer, a little more, right? But that's what we work with you and the real estate professional, and we say, listen, this person loves this house, and this is what needs to happen, and we try to help the person get into their home. And obviously within the client is ultimately the one that says, okay, I want to do that, right? But if that's the case, if the money is the case, a seller concession will help you. And I can tell you right now, 70% of the transactions that I'm currently doing have seller concessions in them in one way or another. One as little as $2,000, one as much as $15,000.
What is the max interest or percentage for a seller's concession?
6% seller's concession for an FHA. For conventional, I believe is 3% maximum. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right, cool. Thank you for checking me. All right. But that could be a considerable amount, right? What's 6% of 300,000? Do the math. 18 grand. So you can basically get $18,000 right on a transaction. Now they cannot exceed your concession cannot exceed the closing costs, right? But still, it's a big help, right? So saving money. Real estate is still America's number one long-term investment. We talked about that, right? So the Gallup organization did a survey and still feel that real estate is the best investment tool there is as compared to stocks and mutual funds, gold, savings, CDs, and bonds. Right? So the mortgage process, what can you expect? You get pre-qualified, like we talked about. You work with a realtor to find a home, right? Then once you find the home, the contract is accepted. Once we get a fully executed contract, that's when the loan application process begins, right? Then it goes into processing, underwriting. They review all the documents, make sure everything's on par. They run fraud reports and credit reports and all that, right? So then you get what's called a conditional approval, right? So you're issued a conditional approval pending the appraisal, right, of the home. So you should be getting a conditional approval before an appraisal. So that way we can start clearing any things that the underwriters may want in order for us to fund this loan. Then once we get the appraisal, we look at the value, we look at any conditions within an appraisal, so we can go ahead and close. Then it's going to go to final underwriting and approval. Then you're gonna get the CDs, which are the closing documents, and Chandler was talking about that earlier. They're gonna get a call. You're gonna say, hey, listen, this is what you have to pay. You're gonna be getting an email or face to face, whatever your preference is, and then you close. So how long is this process? How long should it take? I think a good thorough process is gonna be within a 30-day time frame. You can close before then. I have seen loans close in 21 days, right? But they can also take as long as 60 days, 90 days, never close. Right, so that's the worst case scenario. But in 30 days, if you're working with someone and everything is up to par and you guys and they have all your documentation, it should be within 30 days. That's a good time frame for things to happen because you gotta realize it's not just the mortgage loan originator. We're also working with the attorneys. We're working with title companies. And if it's 2 or 3K loans, I'm working on doing 2 or 3Ks at the moment. Those typically take a little longer. And for those of you who don't know, 2 or 3Ks, those are rehab loans. You can actually borrow money to fix your first time house as well, right? So there goes Chacho. That's my other dog. Right? So picture yourself in your new home. I want to thank you guys.
Wait a minute. Why is it that you run your credit again? Like, isn't the credit report good for 60 days?
No, we don't run it again. No, we don't run the credit again. We do. If we run credit again, if I think we can get a better rate for the individual. Let's say, for example, somebody gets into the home loan at 580. So listen, you want to get into it? Let's go into 580. This is where your interest rate is going to be. But before closing, right? 30, like if the 30-day time frame happens, and let's say like right now I'm working with a client where they're giving me proof that they paid down some debt, and then I'm going to use that to do what's called a rapid rescore and run credit again, so that way it can improve by a certain amount. So you don't do that all the time because you're right. Credit actually for an FHA loan, your credit report is good for up to 120 days, and then for most other type of loans, about 90 days that they're good for.
Why do some banks run it at the end?
I was going to answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's other mortgage companies that they make it part of their process to run credit right before closing to see that there's no changes in your credit. You didn't go out and get a car, getting excited.
Kev, do we do that all the time? Do we run credit all the time?
We do, but that second pull is more of a soft pull. They're not really looking at score so much, but they're like you said, they make sure that
okay.
They do run the credit.
Yeah,
right
so you're right.
Well, what happens?
So soft pull.
What happens if a customer gets a collection, $2,000 collection?
They're gonna have to take care of
You're
it.
gonna have to address it right.
Here's the thing, and if you're working with a lender, they'll say, listen, do not like pay your bills in time. Don't go out and get a brand new car, right? Like when you're doing this. So we tell people don't affect your credit, right? Because those things can kill deals.
Don't put a down payment on furniture.
Exactly. So
you're gonna have to address all of it before closing.
Yeah.
Like, it's happened to me that I had a lawsuit that I wasn't aware of, and that came up during title search.
Yeah.
And my attorney said, "Well, you want to close on this house? You're gonna have to pay." I'm like, I know nothing about it. He's like, "Well, do you want the house?" So I have to write like a $10,000 check. At the last minute, right before closing, because I had no other choice. Like either now or 10 years from now, you're gonna have to pay it.
I have a case right now where it's a 2 or 3K and the person's in a payment plan for their taxes, and we use that as part of that debt to income ratio, but they missed a payment in February, so now they have to pay off the 2016 taxes, right? So that's an additional expense that they didn't think that they had to do, right? But that's why we gotta say pay everything on time. Right? Don't get any new credit. Just let's close on your house. Right? Pay taxes. Right? So we should have that conversation in the beginning. It should be common sense, but we still need to have that conversation, right? So make sure that we close on your house.
My question has to do with, you mentioned that a survey said something along the lines of real estate is one of the, it's still better in terms of investing than stocks and bonds, etc. That being said, I find that we still have a lot of first-time home buyers that's interested in single family. Would you recommend that they at least explore multi-unit?
Great question. Whenever somebody's buying a house for the first time, I always talk about the possibility of multi-unit. One, you'll be able to qualify for more. So if you qualify for a $300,000 single family home, chances are you're going to qualify for $400,000 plus, right, for a multifamily home, depending on the rent roll that you'll be getting in the area that you live, that you're purchasing in. Because we use 75% of that rental income, because we have to account for vacancies, to add on top of your gross monthly income. But I always, listen, our job is to help families get into their home, but we also want their well-being. And we say, listen, if you can get into a two-family home, one is going to help you with the mortgage payments a little bit more, because you'll be able to rent, right, one of them, right? And then going back to rents, you're the landlord, so you can raise those rents, right, as market rents go up as well. And then you can actually, if you buy a house 3.5% down, multifamily, FHA, right, and in a few years you say, I'm tired of multifamily life, I want to move, to Scotch Plains and get a single family. You can actually use the 3.5%, right? You can actually, as long as you don't have an FHA, you can refinance out of the FHA. You have a conventional mortgage, right? You can actually go and use a 3.5% down in a single family property as well, because it's considered an upgrade, right? Your family is expanding, or you're moving to a town in a better neighborhood, or whatever the case may be, or for your schools to go to school. So you can actually use that minimum down payment down program again, right? If to buy your single family, that's a great benefit of buying a multifamily and then a single family, because now talking about investments, you have two equity yielding investments, right? Right, and I say equity investments because prices are going to go up, and then the mortgage balance goes down, right? And then if you use these programs and you have an FHA program for your multifamily residence, when you have enough equity, you can refinance out of it, right? You can cancel mortgage insurance, and you're actually going to be making more money, right, when you move out of that place, because now you're going to rent your apartment too, and now you have an income producing property. Even if it's not income producing, even if it covers it, it's still another property where you're gaining equity in both ways, right? And then you move into your own single family. So I always tell people the options, right? And a lot of people say, you know what, that makes a lot of sense, because our job is to educate them. But some people say, I don't care, I'm tired of the hood. I want to go out and I want to live in in a single family and with a fence, so I can have my dogs go out and play, or whatever the case may be, right? So that might be realistic, right? But our job is to educate them about the possibilities, right? Because if I know that I can, in 5 years, I can move out of my multi-unit and have another house where I can buy, even with the equity of the unit that I have now, I can even use that to purchase, right? So it's another good investment tool. So it's a good conversation to have, right? Cool. Any other questions?
Cha-cha, that's the name of the dog?
Chacho.
Tell them about
Yeah.
Chacho. Tell them about
We actually, my wife and I we have a children's book series according to Chacho. So, well, I say series. We only have one book. We're publishing the next one. But yeah, that's our dog. According Chacho is his name. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Yes. No. Maybe.
Boss
Right.
Associates.
Boss Associates. You guys want to have any final remarks?
Final remarks. Come on, Boss Associates.
What do you guys think about the seminar?
So
Boss Associates.
here, I'll fill in the blank. So first and foremost, if you haven't noticed, we haven't spoken very much, if any, because this was truly an informational based seminar. It was all about giving you as much information as possible, and then obviously we can always mitigate the process. This is the team that we work with. This is who we prefer to work with. It's not the only people that we do work with. But we have a good synergy together. And when you're choosing a real estate agent, it's the exact same thing. Can you relate to that individual? Do they do all these things behind the scenes, and it's kind of like you just kicked your feet up and made the process that much easier? That's what you're going to look for. But first and foremost, if you don't vibe with that person, if that person doesn't have the same energy that you do, that's okay. That's fine. There's 65,000 licensed real estate agents in New Jersey.
65 of them work here.
65.
Culture State, yes. Number one in Scotch Plains.
Most recently, we were officially the largest real estate brokerage in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah. I would like to introduce our broker.
We got to introduce one of them.
Come on, Louis.
Who's number one, not only allowed us to be here this evening and use his second home.
Yes.
But has given us all the courage and confidence and believed in us, which is Mr. Louis Leyva, the CEO
yes.
of Culture State.
Woo! The Without him, we couldn't have
Good job,
done
ladies.
any of this.
Good job, good job. Very proud of you guys. I hope you enjoyed all the information. It was very valuable. I know I learned some stuff, and it's always good to refresh it, even if you know the stuff. So thank you again. I'm very proud of you guys. I can't say that enough. Nicola, come up here. Nicola,
Come on,
don't be
Nicola.
shy.
I don't know.
I'll
You
make
met her
room.
in the front, She
Yeah.
greeted
She
you
was our-
guys.
she
She
was
knows
our-
all of you guys.
She was our greeter.
Come on.
Come on, Nico.
Did everybody sign in?
Yes.
Sweet.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I asked that.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add to it, but I just want to make sure everyone enjoys the rest of this beautiful day.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah,
being
we wanted
here.
to make it short, and also we have meetings on Monday, which
You guys are invited to come join us on a Monday morning. We have trainings for not only agents, but training for anyone who wants to learn more about real estate or people who just want to learn ways of bettering themselves, because we cover it all. So it's open to invite to everyone. 9 to 12 o'clock every Monday morning. Yeah.
yes, it's here. It's
Yep.
9 to.
Here, down here. And before we do that, I will send out everybody logged in with an email upstairs. All right, perfect. So what I'll do is we'll send out an email just for some feedback. There's only 4 questions on there. The first question is your overall experience, rate it 1 to 5. The second one is what was the most exciting, or what you learn the most about, which is an open-ended question. The second one is there anything that we did not include that you would prefer to have had been included or omitted from the presentation? And the last one is, how did you like the food provided by Yoli's? that's all we want to know about. So if you guys would be kind enough to just fill that out for us. This is not only for us to be aware of, but as well for when we do future events, we know exactly what everyone is looking for, and you guys are more than invited to Monday or any other seminar that we do. Thank you. And then, wait, we're giving away my pot?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Sorry. Alrighty, so we would like to give this to you. You were the first one here. So,
And you waited very patiently.
Yes, you did.
You were prompt. Yep.
So thank you for joining us.
He drink coffee. He don't drink no coffee.
It's okay. You can give it to whoever. Give it to somebody.
Do you want to give it away to
You wanna
anybody
give it away
else?
to anybody else here?
That's present?
Maybe his mom drinks coffee. Who knows?
Somebody drinks coffee. They
I'm gonna take it if you don't.
Alrighty.
Excellent,
Oh,
guys.
thank you guys for coming.
Thank you very much.
Somebody drinks coffee.
Who drinks coffee?
Gives the credit here.
You?
Thank you, my people. Gives the credit here. I'm gonna have everyone.
If you guys have any one-off questions, we'll still be here, so feel free.
Everyone's information below.
Here.